I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't even think this is religious in context. That's one of the criticisms, is that, you know, the depiction there is that of a Hindu deity. Therefore, there's some religious overtones to this. I don't think so. I think it's just an image that's popular. Someone was just trying to have some fun by superimposing his image onto that one and to create, you know, just something that would be noteworthy. And he succeeded, you know, because I certainly noticed the cover and it made me want to read the article.
Well, let's talk about some of those things that Obama is juggling right now. With a lame duck Congress in session, there's talk of the federal deficit. That's the big talk in town right now. And President Obama recently announced that he's freezing federal workers' pay for the next 2 years. And a lot of people have reacted strongly to this, particularly the federal worker sector. They're upset about this, and I can understand. But in these tough times, we have to make tough decisions. Things have to get cut somewhere. Somebody is going to have to pay the price. We're all going to have to pay the price in different places. So it'll be interesting to see what Congress does with that, because the President has proposed it, still has to go through Congress for approval.
Well, this is an interesting one. I think what the president has done here, or what he's trying to do, is extend an olive branch to the Republicans. You know, the new Congress coming in is going to be a bit more Republican, and this sentiment around balancing the budget and, in particular, spending less is a strong sentiment in the country. So this is one way that he can directly affect that spending. On the other hand, there's been criticism that there's a lot of contract work that the government hires out and contracts out, and those aren't necessarily being pulled in or reined in. So it's as if the federal workers are taking the hit, but the contract work that's out there, that's a large chunk of this budget, really hasn't been mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. And another criticism I've heard about it is it actually affects civilian federal workers who are working alongside uniformed service members in Iraq and Afghanistan. And whereas those members of the military would be eligible for a cost of living raise or increase in their salary, those civilians that are working right beside them are not going to be eligible for a raise, although they're doing very similar work. So there's a lot of criticism around it, and I think you're right. This is playing politics a little bit. It is trying to extend a hand out to the Republicans and try to play a little bit of their own game. And I think a larger issue here is the debate that's coming up on earmarks, because that's another tough issue that the public has demanded that we address, yet Congress has not really stepped up to say we're willing to give these up.
You know, so I'm glad that you're here on the show today, because there's a couple of points we've talked about on the show. I've been very curious to your opinion on them. You know, there are three things I believe that really ought to happen in our Congress, or if we were to change or amend our Constitution and how we run our government. Those should be getting rid of the earmarks, line item vetoes, and having a balanced budget amendment. Because, as you know, the states are all required to balance their budget, but the federal government does not, which is why we run a deficit and why our debt keeps growing every year. So why is it that this is so hard to pass at the federal level when it exists as a basic tenet at the state level?
Money and getting reelected. I mean, these are the big issues. That's what people are so reluctant to give up their power, and what keeps so many members of Congress in office for so long is their ability to get these earmarks and to funnel that money back into their home districts. So, you know, until you address the larger issues, which are all kind of tied together, campaign finance reform, earmarks.
I mean, why not have term limits for that matter? Why not limit lobbying and that impact? Of course, I might be getting a little ahead of myself. I don't think all of that is really possible to do, but I think there are some basic fundamental flaws in the way we run our government which allow it to run out of control, or at least veer out of control at points.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And another good illustration of that is the food safety bill that's going to be considered in the lame duck Congress this week. And all of us probably think this is a great idea. Let's make our food supply safer, right? I mean, you would be for that.
Of course, on the outset.
Yeah. But, you know, by the time these bills get to a point where they're being considered in Congress, the special interests have gutted them so much. The food industry has gotten their hands into this and mucked it up so badly. And this is what happens. Yeah, we need larger, higher level reform, but I fail to see how it's going to happen.
You know, these all start out as grand ideas, but they fizzle down to some skeleton version of the original idea in place. And by the time it passes through Congress, it's a very unsatisfying bill to both sides of the House, which is something I just have never understood. And it takes so long to get any major legislation through. There's also talk of the Republican Party actively now trying to make sure that President Obama is a one-term president. And this week, we've been hearing inklings of whether or not Sarah Palin is going to throw her hat in the ring for the 2012 election. And now you've got John Boehner, who's going to be the new Speaker of the House. I was curious, because you're such a Boehner fan, whether or not you bought his whole, I'm such an American plea to to the public.
No, I didn't. I didn't buy it at all. And here's why. I mean, every speech I've seen him make in the last 18 months has been so bitter, so angry, so combative. And to stand up there and cry, basically, I wanted to laugh. I didn't feel anything.
The thing I thought that was funny about all of that was, he may have actually been sincere in the fact that he struggled and to become who he is. But at the end of the day, we all have. I mean, this is a story that's as much an immigrant story as it is someone who was born and raised on this soil. Because at the end of the day, if you're an immigrant, you have struggled by default to get to where you are. And to hear him somehow say that experience might have been unique to him, it's really not. That is the American experience. That's what many of us struggle to achieve. That is the American dream. So in that sense, maybe I could identify with what he was saying, but it didn't necessarily sympathize him anymore to me. Then I could only feel so much empathy for what he was feeling, because at the end of the day, I have my own struggles, and I'm surviving just like he has. And so if he struggled to get where he's gotten, that's great. There's many others behind him who have done the same thing.
Yeah, and I've criticized Boehner in the past, as you know, on many of our past shows, and I've talked about his tan. But to be fair, the guy